Hello, beautiful community. Just a quick 5-minute episode. Let's turn on this smartphone together and see what we can reflect upon as far as the strike on the Crimea Bridge is concerned. The Kerch Bridge is struck for the third time during the war today. The aftermath of Operation Spiderweb, which was not as successful as the Ukrainian numbers claim, but still fiendishly successful. And although, meanwhile, there are negotiations going on, or negotiations in quote marks, the appearance of negotiations. What can we say about any of this? I mean, it's very important not to underestimate how much Ukraine's interested in two aims when it comes to attacks on Russian objects, or on Crimea for that matter. Now, number one, it's to raise the costs of carrying the war on for the Kremlin. But number two is to create destabilization in Russia, to create a situation whereby more parties conflict with one another about whether to carry on the war, and that conflict begins to spiral out of control. And we almost saw that happen with the Prigozhin mutiny. So interestingly, there's a kind of a mirror equivalent between Ukraine's aspiration for Russia, which is ungovernability, and Russia's aspiration, well, not just for Ukraine, but for the entire West, which is ungovernability. Putin right now obviously has to go quiet in his typical style during events like this. But one of his important aspirations over the coming days and weeks is to convince the depoliticized blob, which is just about over half of the Russian population, that he's trying to stop the war, even if he isn't. The reality is that Putin is in principle open to stopping the war, but basically wants to carry it on until unless he's given a piece of paper which just says Ukrainian capitulation. But he's open in principle, and he has been thinking about it. And I would even go as far as saying that on his own terms, he's made a mistake. He could have actually taken what Trump was offering him and used the re-engagement with the West, the ingratiation with Trump, to destabilize the West from within, if you like, to destabilize the West from a position of being partly reintegrated into it, or at least reintegrated with the United States. So Putin, on his own terms of wanting the destruction of the West, is in fact, democratic destruction of the West, is in fact mishandling his cards, in my judgment. But back to the point I was making, it's been very important for Putin to convince part of the Russian population that he is seeking peace, that peace is a prospect, is a near-term prospect, and that Putin is pursuing it as much as he possibly can. And what's getting in the way are these malign Westerners who are causing various provocations that are preventing Putin from stopping the war. So don't forget how much Putin has an eye on what is arguably still his biggest challenge. That's to say, balancing politicization and depoliticization at home and keeping the population under wraps. The trouble with the negotiations, it's a totally scatterbrained approach to this chat, I hope you forgive me. The problem with the negotiations is that they are proceeding on a basis that's really a byproduct of Putin having dominated Trump. And that's to say, Putin dominated Trump into normalizing the idea that you can make the case for 77 different demands before you stop the war. Because Trump started with the position, we've got to stop this and then we negotiate. Putin essentially bullied Trump out of this, or rather danced Trump out of this, taking advantage of Trump's narcissistic dependence on his relationship with Putin as a central thing in his life. The demands the Russians are making are essentially demands around Ukrainian capitulation. Now, they are raising the possibility of not taking back, or of not taking the territories they have put into the constitution as Russian, but which they don't control. But they're saying either you give these to us, Ukraine, even if you don't control them, or perhaps you keep them, but then we want several things to happen in Ukraine domestically, including an election. And including Ukraine ceasing military activities. So they're essentially saying, well, we might give you these territories, which we claim to be ours in the constitution, but we'll only do so if you make all of these things happen that we want to happen that are not really feasible. So why are the Russians taking such a strong position? What's the basis of this? Now, there are two bases here. One is that Putin wants to bluff and basically win by talking about how he's winning. And that's to say, Putin is negotiating as though some kind of miraculous Russian summer offensive has taken place and the Ukrainian front's about to collapse. So Putin is saying, well, as this is going to happen anyway, we might as well start talking about it now. But then the other thing is that Putin thinks that nothing too crazy will happen to the Russian economy. A. B. There's absolutely no evidence in his mind that Trump is about to start pressuring Russia properly. C. He's thinking he's making slow progress on the front line. And D. He's thinking that Western democracies are in decline and that as the United States steps away, Europe won't be able to carry Ukraine. So that's, I think, where Putin is coming from. Now, why did we stop here? Because we've done a little bit of throwing stuff at the board. So lots of love and talk very soon.